And we're live.
All right. Welcome everybody to the January 7th edition of the TELx Council meeting. These regular meetings serve as the heartbeat of our governance system, fulfilling multiple essential functions, including creating a transparent window into council operations for our community, providing structured forums for discussing and refining proposals, offering proposers a platform to present their ideas directly to council members, enabling community members to witness, discuss, and help shape these proposals, delivering consistent platform updates to keep everybody informed, maintaining open lines of communication between council members, and facilitating direct community engagement through our interactive Q&A sessions. Having said that, I think it's time to review the agenda for this week. See if I can pull that up here real quick. The agenda this week will include the recap of the last meeting, although that was a while back. I'm not sure if Boo's prepared to give us a recap.
I'm all ready.
Okay, great. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Just kick it off, Boo, if you don't mind.
Sure. So the TELx Council meeting recap back on the 10th of December, 2025. It was an unusually long technical meeting with many points covered, so I thought I'd give a longer recap than usual. And as we said, it was nearly 4 weeks ago, so just please bear with me for the next few minutes. There were 4 main topics discussed. Number 1, Uniswap V4 Pools, performance and incentives. General sentiment. Council members and the community agreed that Uniswap V4 concentrated liquidity pools are difficult to understand for most users, hard to manage due to range-based positions, reward rules, and active management needs, unpredictable in terms of expected rewards. The core issues identified were that rewards cannot be reliably estimated due to moving tick ranges and unpredictable trade flows, active liquidity management requirements. Advanced users may disproportionately benefit compared with retail/community users, and the current incentive design may not be optimally serving the growth of the TEL ecosystem. Strategic direction. The Council will maintain the current pool short term whilst collecting more data. An internal review will evaluate pool performance, user participation patterns, and incentive efficiency. For future considerations, there's a possible need to simplify liquidity participation for broader adoption, an interest in alternative models, such as the balancer clam style designs that offer concentrated liquidity benefits, reduced management complexity, and there's a need for internal analytics tooling, such as subgraphs, to audit rewards and generate clearer performance reporting. Number 2, eXYZ digital dollars and incentive strategy. eXYZ liquidity is expected to significantly exceed current TELx TVL. The current USDC/EMXN pool is considered experimental and is likely to be deprecated as the eXYZ corridors come online. The Council has acknowledged TEL emissions are a limited and valuable resource. Incentives must align with real usage and corridor demand, and formal proposals will be needed to update or retire pools and reallocate incentives. Number 3, TELx website improvements. Ongoing UI/UX enhancements based on community feedback. We have consistent reward display formatting, cleaner pool and portfolio interfaces, and new subscribe/unsubscribe/closed position tabs currently in staging for QA. The goal is to improve clarity, reduce clutter, and simplify participation. Number 4, the TELx University. The beginner education module is near completion. The education focuses on DeFi fundamentals, liquidity pools, impermanent loss, and retail-friendly onboarding. The final platform integration is underway using Kajabi if I've pronounced that right, which is the online course platform with business tools. And we're targeting launch as soon as approvals and the setup are complete. For rescheduling the next steps, the council plans internal working sessions to define target user profiles, clarify long-term liquidity and incentive strategy, and prepare formal proposals for potential changes. That's the end of the recap. Does anyone have any questions? So just give it a few moments. Looking at you, Derek.
No, there's a question in here about why mainnet has been delayed. There's just so we're clear, there's no the roadmap site has not been updated with any sort of changes in timeline structure or kind of where the cadence of things have gone. So I'm not sure where that comment's stemming from, but no, everything's still moving at a kind of a breakneck speed. The devs are working really hard. So there's been no hiccups since before Christmas, and we'll have another update here for the roadmap site likely tomorrow. So stay tuned. If not, it'll be shortly after that because of the holidays. But we have the platform and council meeting, so that'll be the place to discuss that if in case any more questions come up about that. That's the only one in there for right now. Well, there's another TELx question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ty.
I'll just jump in here then. Yeah, I just got some feedback on the Discord channel, which from a LP provider, and he's saying basically, I fear this V4 situation is going to chase away LPs. Can't wait for Balancer to integrate reclaim pools on Polygon. Looks like it's just what we need. So I think we should just jump right into discussing the V4 pool situation. And certainly the developments over the last couple of weeks that Derek's picked up on is that over the Christmas period, there seems to be almost a gamification, although we're not calling it gamification, of the rewards, where there's robots, or it looks like robots doing trades within a liquidity pool to boost rewards at a certain liquidity point. And so it's almost like just in time, but more controlled than just in time. And I think that's beginning to skew the balance of rewards. So what we're picking up on the analysis that we've done is that one or two wallets seem to be getting the bulk of rewards across two, if not all three pools. So we actually need to address that, because I don't think the structure that we've got in place at the moment is serving the needs of the wider community. That's one point. And the other point, just following up from the recap, was that we did have a scheduled call with Storm over the TELx University work that was done, but there was a scheduling conflict and nothing actually happened. So the progress between last meeting and now in terms of the website, the TELx University website, there hasn't been any progress recently. So that's really the update to fill in the gaps on where we are at the moment.
Okay, well, if that's the end of the recap, then obviously we'll just go back to the agenda. And yeah, if Mike, you just want to take those one at a time as we seem to be going into different points there, I'll leave it with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can lead off with like the current state of V4 pools, and then discuss the potential alternatives versus fixes to sort of align ourselves with community incentives. I know you all have a lot of strong work on that and some opinions on that, so I'll open the floor to anybody who'd like to kick that off.
Ty, go ahead if you want. Otherwise, I can share
no,
what
I was going to say Derek's.
Yeah. So look, and I know I'm not on the TELx council, just to be clear, but I got really interested over the last 2 months in kind of the how these V4 pools work, subgraphing, had some talked to some community members that are in the community chat who also have really interest in this too. I'm there's a few things, right? One, I don't think necessarily that this is a result of quote unquote bot activity. That's inconclusive at this point based on all the RPC data that I've run. So basically, just so everybody knows, I'm going to be talking like Marcus here in a second. But what I did with the help of some community members was I rebuilt took a project that had a subgraph that one of the community members was working on, and then what I did is I built out RPC points, which essentially can call on chain, which is some of the infrastructure the community member had. So thank you for that. I think his name's Ryan. And then what I did is I took the TELx calculator and I built a whole backend that I could query on chain with that calculator to run the same reward structure that the rewards hook does, right? So it's the same logic, right? It's not 100%. Again, I'm a vibe coder. I'm not by no means a backend dev. But I got it within, it runs results over 3 periods within like 0.5%, right? So it's the margin of error is very, very low. So it's pretty accurate. The thing that I still is inconclusive for me is that if, for instance, I did a big dive last night where I was looking at specifically, we identified January 3rd as a day that we saw some of this inflated, I call it synthetic trading volume, where like a bot trades back and forth inside the pool to generate a bunch of volume, right? It was about $240,000 in trading volume, which should, quote unquote, cause disproportionate fee growth within a certain person's range. So the thing is that I don't think it's doing what people are thinking it's doing. So like when I ran that I took all the block ranges for that day, the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and I ran the TELx calculator script against just that day, right? Only that day, and that's it, because that's the day that I identified there was this crazy volume. This includes some of the wallets that were disproportionately in there as well. And so when I ran the script against just a single day, the output was not some crazy 90% discrepancy, right? It wasn't showing, I think that wallet, because of that volume and because of the amount of liquidity in that volume, had like a 45% share. And then the rest of it was spread out through the other wallets, which is very different than the 90% that we're seeing kind of like in the Polygon pool, for instance. So I don't believe the full story is understood yet. Ryan and I were just talking about this stuff kind of a little bit, and he was working on some things too. And I think I want to talk to Marcus, because I talked to Marcus a lot about how the script was built, and specifically subgraphing, which is what Uniswap uses to an extent, and then RPC calls, which is like running a script and pulling all the block data. RPC calls are more accurate because you can pull every single liquidity event or every single event on every single block. Whereas the way that the subgraph right now is built, it indexes all that data, but it compresses some of it. Otherwise, it'd be a ton of data to go back and look at. But you can get it really, really close midweek. The issue that I'm running into when comparing the two is the start and the beginning of the week. And the way that Marcus explained it is that the script has a mechanism, like let's say the week begins, the epoch begins at 0.00, right, whatever, on the day, right? And if that time and space is within two blocks, the calculator has to choose which block it clamps to make the full block. It's got to choose, am I going to use this block or this block, and what does that look like, right? So I think there is some I don't know about improvements. I got to run through it with Marcus, and because he explains it much better than I can, of like the logic, and if there's any, because the next thing I want to do is I want to run if that clamping mechanism changes, will that improve the delta? When I say the delta, the spread of rewards, right? Is there a big change? Because when I did the individual analysis of specifically the wallet I was looking at, and specifically the day and time and that block range that I was looking at, it didn't jump out to me like this is causing a huge discrepancy. And I think that in itself is interesting, which means that the hook script is working as intended, right? It means that it is throttling that any sort of even external bot behavior and the ability to earn from that aspect. So the next thing I'm going to do, and you know, I have had a ton of time, and I'm talking with a community member about this, and I want to talk to Marcus and Leo and some others too. Is just I want to look at some of these fringe cases, and I want to run like what happens at the beginning of the epoch versus the end of the epoch, and is that where I have to identify where in the timeline of the week is the discrepancy coming from, because I think I've identified that it's not all coming from some giant synthetic liquidity event. Some of it is definitely, but you have to if you think about this logically in the way that the script is designed, let's say you do this, and ideally let's say somebody has 150,000 in liquidity, and they get in the pool and they start a position, and then they go to their bot and they make this trading volume, right? Because they set a really tight range and they're within range, and then they're going to generate all this volume while they're the tightest range and have the most liquidity to earn an uneven share, right? That's the concept. What happens is that they can't move, because of the way the script is built, they can't move that position for 24 hours, right? If they do, they don't get any rewards. So they have to wait 24 hours, which drastically increases your loss, right? Your what's the word I'm looking for, Ty? Goodness gracious, it's been a day. Impermanent loss. Yeah, right. So it greatly increases your impermanent loss risk. Now, in order to really do that at scale, like I just explained, the example that I gave when I ran the script was a 47% share, right? That's what was earned, which is high, right? But if that person has 47% of the liquidity in the pool, then that's a reasonable outcome, right? I would say if I have 47% of the liquidity in the pool, then I earn 47% of the rewards, that's a reasonable explanation, right? So if we look at it that way, the person would have to execute that strategy every 24 hours perfectly without internal loss, and that's not even factoring slippage from trading. So when you really kind of grab this out on a week-long scale, it becomes the pattern to be repeated is very difficult to do, which is also why we haven't seen that happen. We haven't seen the pattern repeat. We've seen it maybe once or twice. I think I found it 2 or 3 different times, and I still have to investigate those. This is week 21 that I was looking at, so January 3rd specifically. And that's what I figured out. So I have not yet gone down the rabbit hole, which I plan on tonight, of looking at the clamping, which is what Ryan is talking to me about right now. And what I want to do is I want to run and talk to Marcus about, like, if there's if that's a fringe case, if that's the way that this is designed on purpose because of any other factors on the script, or are we going down a rabbit hole that's unsustainable? Because at the end of the day, the goal obviously is a delta range that makes sense for rewards, but the secondary goal and the whole purpose of a liquidity pool is to limit your slippage. And the great part about these V4 pools is that they are designed around limiting slippage, and they've accomplished that. If you look at the base pool, our slippage on that pool, we only have, I think, 250,000 in TVL in there from what I saw, and the slippage went from 5 or 6% before we started V4 all the way down to like 0.3, 0.4, right? So that side of what V4 tries to accomplish works, right? So long story short, I don't have the full answer yet. I still think there's more to the story. And I know that the community is pretty vocal about, like, we need to figure this out and go from there. There's a reason why everybody I talk to that has any experience in liquidity pools says they haven't even touched V4 or hooks because of how nuanced and complex it is.
Right. Yeah. So and just
I'll leave it there.
Not to interrupt you, Derek,
no, go ahead. That's it.
And I think sort of like as a council, we need to sort of come to a conclusion on, I do agree that the concentration of liquidity is meeting its intended effect, but the distribution of rewards is not. And so we have to discover if there is a elegant solution to this current V4 situation that we have that can incentivize liquidity in a more community-based and easy to understand model, or if we need to scrap it and do something different. And I think we need to make that determination, by the end of the month. And so I think we should set a target to do that. I don't know how other council members feel about that, but I don't know enough technically to know if this can be fixed so that it meets the desires of the community and the TELx Council, and how to get to that determination.
Last thing I'll say, and I talked with Eric a little bit about this on the side, is that I think you guys, Boo had mentioned it in his recap, that like using this type of pool for stables doesn't make much sense. So I know, that's one thing to think about. I know it's on your guys' agenda. I think to answer your question, I'll know by tonight if I can repeat it or not, and run through the simulations myself. I built out a whole script on this. I just haven't had a chance to do it. I ran out of time last night. Yeah, and I think we gotta, the reason I say this, I'm not a council member, so I don't, whatever you guys decide, I just want to give you more data to make your decision, right? On
Absolutely, 100% appreciate that. Appreciate
Thank you.
your input on this, very much. And you've been really diving in and learning all kinds of stuff that I don't have the ability to do. So I really appreciate you on that. And I'd like to, when smart guys like you can talk to smart guys like Leo and Marcus, maybe there is a solution here. So that's, I think, where we need to get to relatively quickly.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And again, thanks, Derek, because I know you've put hours of work into these deep dives you're doing. I'd just like to say a couple of things. Just listening to you talk, I got the impression that it's as if I'm saying somebody in a broad sense, but somebody's trying to experiment with a way to, get maximum rewards out of it. And we're at the early stages of tagging on to this effort that whoever's doing it's doing it. And the other thing is that the fear of impermanent loss, that doesn't apply so much if you've got a tight range and if you put your positions over and above the current tick point. Because if the market's trading at a certain tick point and you put in liquidity above that tick point, then you're only putting in a bunch of ETH. And if you put liquidity in below the tick point, you're only putting in a bunch of TEL. So, and at that point, until the market moves into your range, you're not suffering any impermanent loss because you can just withdraw your liquidity. So you could set up positions ahead of where the market is to try and satisfy the 24-hour qualifying period. And you hope that the market doesn't move into that range within the 24. So as soon as the market moves into the range, you've met the qualifying part. You can withdraw your liquidity from the other side because it's not been touched. So you're now in position with liquidity and you're hammering the bot activity to generate the volume of rewards. And so the fear of impermanent loss or the effect of impermanent loss on a tight range is not as great if you've got good management of your positions. So as soon as the market moves outside your range, you've reaped the rewards, you've reaped the volume, and you reverse out your liquidity, you've met the qualifying period, and therefore you're minimizing your risk. If you understand where I'm trying to put my head.
No, you said that. You said it well. I mean, I agree with you. So like, there's levers that the council could pull, right? You could. One of the thoughts off the top of my head is make some sort of a I call it a tax bracket. That's a poor way to explain it, where it's like a degrading earnings based on total liquidity, so that you can, the goal is, right, however much liquidity you get in, you earn that around that in net rewards based on your performance, if you perform perfectly, right, or whatever your guys' metric of that would be. Another would be that instead of the 24-hour period being pro rata, right, where you can set your position, you still earn through that, but you have to stay within 24 hours. You just make it where if you reset your position for 24 hours, you earn nothing, right? So it further penalizes people that want to continue to reset positions and run really tight ranges. There's many different ways, I guess, you guys could potentially look at this. And I'll put that all in a report and run some scenarios for you.
But I know the danger is we're making it more and more complicated in terms.
Sure, but
Exactly.
I don't think you're as far off as you guys as we may think we are. Really. I think with the best way to make decisions is with data, and we don't have enough data right now. And I want to get that for you guys. That's my goal.
Okay, we've got a couple of raised hands there. I think Eric was first. So, Eric. Not sure if you're on mute, Eric.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Ah, cool. Yeah, I got some problems with my connection. Yeah, it's been a lot of has been said. I think Derek and I spoke last week. I didn't speak to Ty still. The thing is that I'm not. I read about the history why we built the system and all. It's pretty awesome what you guys built. It is kind of complicated though, and I think that, like Derek said, if we are rewarding liquidity, effective liquidity, and incentivize that, I think that's our main goal, to keep on incentivizing the liquidity that actually matters. But it should be accessible for everyone. You don't want to have one guy running bots, screwing the system and earning the reward. So I think that's the main target for us, to keep it accessible for everybody. On the other side, you don't want to, if it's one individual case that's running it, gaming the system a bit. In the end, like Ty, you talked about V3. I would love to talk with you and the other guys some more about V3 and V4. It's really, really hard in V3 to not gamble. In the end, if you put different time of different ranges on it, below the ticks, above the ticks, in the end, it's pretty hard to, especially with non-correlated tokens like ETH and TEL. It's pretty hard to keep your ranges such that your impermanent loss does not outweigh the incentives or the fees that you get. So I think it would be interesting, like Mike, like you said, to just monitor some data for the coming weeks, see how what comes out of it, and actually have some data to go on, because you don't want to take action on one case that might or might not be gaming the system. So yeah, it's I think this takes some time, and the end of the month sounds good to me to run some data and look what we're actually talking about. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Leo.
Hey, yeah. So first of all, thank you, Derek, because that's awesome work you've put in, and glad you're enjoying it. Eric, I agree. I think there is kind of a side we almost don't see, and that is the net profitability of these strategies. So like, we see the rewards, but we don't see the impermanent loss and stuff. Maybe that can be an area of research as well. It should be modelable, even though it's quite a lift technically. But yeah, I think we need more data to see, are these people continuing to perform these, gamings of the system? Because if they are, then it does probably imply that it's net profitable for them. In terms of having, making a decision about V4 and the hook and the current setup as a whole at the end of the month, I think we could do with more time. And I think there are other aspects we haven't actually even considered, which is like a lot of how this was designed was to make this, make this modifiable by the council. So first thing that springs to mind to me, for example, is let's pump up the 24 hours and see what effect that has. It's like in the council constitution, I think one of the points actually says it's an experiment, and like we are in experimentation mode now. So we have this opportunity to like see the experiment through. What happens if we change that 24 hours to 6 days, for example? What effect does that have? If that smooths things out, then we might be looking for some point somewhere in between 6 days and 24 hours, and then it's just a bit of fine tuning. If we give it 6 days and we're getting the same behaviors, then it's a different story altogether. But I think we should give it kind of the chance to work, and I think that involves taking the maximum points in a way, because 24 hours was just plucked out of thin air. It's not really got any backing to it yet. Let's collect the data to get that. So I think that will take some time, and in this case, like simulations are great and everything, but the inputs here, i.e. The settings, do affect the outputs, i.e. user behavior. So we can't see that ahead of time, really, unless you want to go like, I think you can do like Monte Carlo simulations or something, but that gets a bit mental. Let's treat it as an experiment and see how users react to our inputs, basically.
Yeah, I would agree on extending the time limit. I think that might help, because it's really hard to keep a tight range. Normally in V3, if you have a really tight range, you want to get in and get out, do your thing, get the fees.
And that's what we're seeing as well. So.
Yeah. But extending the time, like, I don't know, 24 hours, 48 hours. It's really hard, especially ETH and TEL are not that correlated. I think you might have a problem with this system and gaming it if you look at correlated pairs like the EMXN and the USDC pair, I think it is. You want to pay attention to that if you use this system.
I think also we need to do a deeper dive into Merkle, because I've had a very light read of the documentation, but I've never taken it any further than that. But I think their solutions recognize the problems that we are facing. And so I know we've put a lot of work into our solution with the hook, and we certainly need the hook in place for our election and voting side of things. But in terms of our reward generation, maybe there is a better commercial solution out there that we can employ. I think we need to look into that. But I'm not sure how we can run a Merkle simulation alongside our own to get a valid comparison.
Yeah, Ty, for me, I'm really curious how our community thinks about the Merkle part. I'm familiar with Merkle. I personally love the protocol, but I'm curious if there are more people out there in our Telfund that know of Merkle and what their opinion is. Personally, for me, I really like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Andrew, who's not on the call and sends his apologies, has done more research into Merkle than anybody else. Maybe I'm misspeaking, Leo. I don't know how much you've done there. Excuse me, but I think it was Andrew that first introduced Merkle, or maybe it was Parker or Leo that mentioned it and Andrew followed up on it. I can't recall.
Yeah, I think it was Parker, and we had a call with that guy, and yeah, I think we could get it going. Whether it works off chain, so it's not going to get in the way of what's currently working, I guess. So I kind of think the simplest way would be get them both working on the same pool and split the rewards in half or something like that. Something we can consider for sure.
Could we do a parallel run under like a demo agreement with Merkle just to see how it performs against our own scripts?
Yeah, I think something like that would work. Just need to talk to them and see what the options are. But if we want to run tests in parallel or whatever, I'm sure they'll have ideas for how to do it. So could be a good next step.
I hate loading stuff on you, Leo, but is that something that the TAU could do for us? Is since you've got the contact with Merkle, I mean, I'm happy to sit in on anything, and I'm sure Andrew would be as well, and obviously Eric, who's used it before, that would be valuable as well. But maybe we can set up a call and just discuss how we could evaluate the effectiveness of Merkle versus our own.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I would be happy to join. It's no problem. I do think that like I said, I like the platform of Merkle. I do think that we have to think carefully of why we want Merkle. If we wanted to solve the problems that we have now, we got to ask them for sure and ourselves if they're actually solving issues that we want them for. But beyond that, it's like I said, it's a great platform to use.
Yeah, and obviously looking forward to more liquidity into the stablecoin multiple pools, not just USDC, EXMN, but the other pools as we need them to come online this year.
Yeah, and that's also something to understand for the community. I think the less part of our problem with the possible gaming of the system is also because of the low liquidity still. When you have low liquidity pools, whether it's V2, V3, whatever, there is a bigger chance of people gaming the system, whether it be bots or just smart guys just reading the docs pretty well. So in the future, with more liquidity, things ought to smooth out.
Is liquidity the issue or volume?
I think it's mostly liquidity. When you have low liquidity, the prices tend to go out of range faster. It's more easy to game the system with high volume. Low liquidity and high volume is it's always a mess.
Yeah, isn't it, Eric? The more you interact in that pool, right, the more the price moves of the tick range, right? So like low liquidity, if one side of the pair, right, sells, it'll move much faster than a higher liquidity pool. So it makes the ranges much more volatile.
Exactly. But Derek was saying the price impact was good. It was low. Doesn't that imply high liquidity? Let
me rephrase. Sorry, Leo. If I'm buying TEL on base, what V4 does is it takes if I have let's say I have $300,000 in liquidity in a V3 pool or a V2 pool, right? And it spreads it out over the range of the volume, right? The difference is what V4 does and somewhat V3 is it takes that liquidity and puts it in a really tight range, and because everybody's changing, this where they're at, to keep it as close as possible and earn fees and rewards, that concentration when you make a trade through Uniswap is much higher of I'll call it liquidity per block or whatever. So your slippage is way less. It acts like having 5 or 6 or 7 times more liquidity in other pools, which is great for the trader, for the people that are buying the coins on base. What I'm speaking about specifically is like if you're looking at, let's say you have $300,000 in liquidity in a V3 pool or a V2 pool, right? And it spreads it out over the range of the volume, right? The difference is what V4 does is it takes that liquidity and puts it in a really tight range, and because everybody's changing, this where they're at, to keep it as close as possible and earn fees and rewards, that concentration when you make a trade through Uniswap is much higher of liquidity per block or whatever. So your slippage is way less. It acts like having 5 or 6 or 7 times more liquidity in other pools, which is great for the trader, for the people that are buying the coins on base. the pairing range within the pool, meaning I believe it's right now it's around 825,000. It's how many Telcoin equals 1 ETH essentially is the calculation. Anytime there's a buy or a sell on one side of that equation, it changes where that line on the subgraph is and where the range that people are earning are in, if that makes sense. Did I explain that poorly or?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry, Eric. Yeah, sorry to jump. Go ahead.
No, that's true, and especially the impermanent loss. What also matters is the ratio of tokens that you put in your liquidity range. If you put, for example, if you put in a ratio in of 80-20, for example, TELx, and that's your ratio, impermanent loss can differ a lot depending on ratio also. So it's the it's the bandwidth that counts. It's the total liquidity that counts, but also the ratio. So it's a whole, yeah. I think if you really want to game this system, it is possible, but you have to do it with bots or something. Or for me, it would not be possible to keep everything in range, especially in non-correlated pools. Like I said, when you got correlated pools, that I think in the future will be pretty important for TEL. You really got to look at how you want to create your deep liquidity, because everything stands and falls with deep liquidity in the end. For users also price range. So it's I would love to see your data, Derek.
Yeah, I'll have a full report for you guys tonight. I data is only as good as how accurate it is, right? So I need to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good transition point. I think we should get a little bit more data and then talk about altering the time frame and what that might look like going forward. But let's close out that discussion on V4 pools for now, for the sake of brevity. And let's, I think one of the other agenda items that we probably need to address is the TELx website, which is, I think, been a bit behind the times, if you will. Last time I checked, we were on the polls, we're still reflecting on November 25th as the last date on some of these pools that data was collected on the TELx site. So we need to figure out what's going on there. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts there. No, we don't have our web dev guys on here, but I'd love to know why we're not pulling refreshed data from Uniswap.
I can answer it if you want, Mike.
Oh, wonderful.
A lot of what it comes down to is, as Marcus explained, it's having a subgraph feature. It's very difficult to pull accurate data without one, right? And right now, I think we're piggybacking off of Uniswap subgraph, so it might lag a little bit, and that's causing some of the issues. And I think there's some UI bugs as well. I don't know exactly how Khalil's implemented it, but that's why, like, on the page where you're looking at TV, I think the main page where it says TVL and volume and it says unavailable. So I haven't looked exactly how he has it run, but it has something to do with the way that the subgraph, our subgraph for that, is actually configured. And I think he was working on some solutions for that the last time I talked to him.
Yeah, Halil is investigating. So
all right.
The only other option is to run our own subgraph, which is what I did, is run our own subgraph and pull the data from there, which is doable, but is a whole implementation process, and we can go down that rabbit hole at a later date.
Okay. Any other discussion points on the TELx website other than the current lagginess?
I was going to say there were a few suggestions over the break, so I've passed those on to Halil, so he should be working on those soon. But after the subgraph stuff.
Okay, great.
It was about like getting the guide on there, the liquidity provider guide, just to make sure people have a clear set of rules and understanding of how it all works. So that kind of thing. But yeah.
Andrew brought this up to me, and when it comes to the ecosystem of like whatever we do with the website, of potentially putting, is for you guys to decide, but putting TELx within that scope so that it's all the search functions and everything else tie together. Obviously, most of the work's all completely done, but I told him that I would bring it up on the call since he's not going to be here, and you guys can discuss that at a later date as a to-do. But just depending on, when we're talking about a whole ecosystem, TELx is a really important part. And yeah, the TELx website was actually the one that we gave. We've been looking at as an example for what we could do with the ecosystem. So something to think about for you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. Any other comments on TELx website? If not, then I think eXYZ Digital Cash was on the agenda. I know that over the break since our last meeting, we obviously the TDAB soft launched the bank and minted the first 10 million EUSD, which is awesome. And I think that those assets are intended to be pooled in liquidity pools in the coming week or so. I don't have much information on that as far as the structure of those pools or how those are going to work. But once we have more information on that, we can decide as a council, like our participation in those as far as incentives and whatnot, and to see how that goes. But I don't really have much more information on that at the moment. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on eXYZ or Digital Cash LPs.
No, we're just waiting for further info at the moment, so that's good.
Yeah, I think we should, by our next meeting, we should have more to discuss on that and have some options to consider for incentivization.
We were talking about having a discussion with Paul on future plans. I don't know if you've got an inside track on that, Mike, or not.
I have an inside track to Paul, but yeah, I can certainly ask him to come on for a call in the future to talk to him about his schedule, and maybe if I'll see if the next meeting is possible, but we'll see. Yeah, I think that the 2026 plan is getting pretty firmed up at the moment, and so I think once we have that all solidified, then we'll be able to sort of get some good info on how to steer the ship to be supportive of the mission at TELx.
Yeah, because it would be good if we had some kind of knowledge on what's happening on that side. Help us.
Absolutely.
Plan. Yeah, cool.
All right. I guess we could flip this over to Q&A and see if there's any Q&A or discussion points that have not been addressed that anybody on the council would like to bring up, or anybody that's listening in.
I see one question. I need to scroll back and look at it here. Yeah, I see your question. I believe it was based on looking at liquidity on other platforms on Base besides Uniswap, like Aerodome, for example. I know that was asked in I think Discord too. If you guys want to touch base on that, and that's from Stanzavlav. And if that wasn't your question, please repeat it because it might be too far up in the chat. I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I did see that on Aerodrome. It's something that I have got no knowledge on.
Yeah, Ty. I think it's important that we look at all possibilities for the coming months or period. I'm really looking forward to the eXYZ pools and creating the best liquidity and yeah, for me it's still unclear what will be the best structure. Could be Aerodrome, could be, I don't know, Curve, Fluid. We got a lot of options, and the good part for us is that we don't have to invent it all ourselves. The market is developing so fast that we just have to be informed at all times. And yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think this is going to be an awesome year where we see how Telcoin's digital cash platform kind of grows and evolves. Should grow pretty rapidly over the course of the next 12 months. And so that'll be fun to watch and participate in and see where we can be useful and helping to bring liquidity to the world.
Hi, Ty, and then I have two more stream questions I got to answer.
Okay, just a quick question. We've kind of bypassed the TELx University stuff. Leo, have you been in touch with Zach? Because I know we had that misscheduling of the meeting with Storm, but has anything been firmed up on that to get the Module 1 course material released and loaded on the website?
No, I haven't had any contact with Zach. I need to get in touch with him. We could do with a review as a council, though, of the videos and provide any feedback there. I think there are like a few minor fixes, which Zach seems capable of doing. So it would be great if we can do that. I think I made a ticket for it on Trello. And in the meantime, I'll get hold of Zach and figure out how to keep things moving on that side.
Yeah,
Okay.
Leo, I saw your thing on Trello, Leo, and actually saw the university site for the first time last week and dove into it. It's pretty neat, actually. I will give you some feedback soon.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, especially the DeFi side with the explanations of the liquidity pools, and it was pretty good, man. Yeah, I really liked it. I'll give you some feedback this week.
Zach did a decent job on it, yeah. We're looking forward to getting it out. So
awesome.
Yeah, all feedback is welcome, and we can take it from there.
All right. Two things in the chat that I can answer because they're first one. I found the question was, why isn't the Telcoin app available in Bulgaria? Just a reminder for everybody watching, the Telcoin app is a Telcoin Holdings product. This is the Telcoin Association that governs the network. So we can't really speak on behalf of those products. So the best place to ask that inquiry is through telco.in. There's a help page there where you can submit those questions. V5, same thing. There's another question here about V5 discussed. Those are not directly Telcoin network products. Those are from the banking side and everything else, which is not in the purview of the Telcoin Association. So just to make sure that we are answering all the questions, I wanted to make sure I responded to those.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, I think we can button it up.
That's it for the stream chat.
Next meeting, 21st of January.
Next meeting, 21st of January. And we'll have some discussions between now and then, and we'll keep moving the ball.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, guys.
Great. Good night. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Weird.